In the past, I've heard people unironically say, you can't cuck the tuck. Goddamn. Well, on top of being massively cringe, that indeed is not true. You can cuck the tuck, and that's exactly what happened here. Tucker Carlson he would always go out there and pretend to be, I'm Mr. Populist, and I'm anti-neocon, and I want to end the wars, because I'm like this edgy, cool new version of a right-winger. I'm not like the old-school dipshit movement conservatives. I'm like young and hip and whatever, even though I'm not young and I'm not hip, but you get it. I represent this new sort of paleo-conservative ideology, and we're different. We're different. Oh, are you? Well, let's find out. Here he is commenting on Joe Biden's withdrawal. Take a look.
We're starting to learn the identities of some of the large but still unknown number of Americans, in the low hundreds, they've assured us, who were abandoned by the U.S. military this week and remain trapped in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. The Sacramento Bee has just reported that at least 24 students enrolled in the San Juan Unified School District in the state of California are stranded somewhere in Afghanistan tonight. No one's certain where they are or how they're going to get home. The White House hasn't bothered to comment despite being asked. What's so interesting, the contrast that informs us really, is that over the past week, this same administration has overseen the evacuation of tens of thousands of unvetted Afghan nationals, many of whom will now be moved into neighborhoods around the United States and stay permanently. They didn't seem to encounter any problems in doing this. Thanks to meticulous and thoughtful planning, Operation Change America Forever came off precisely according to plan. It worked flawlessly. But a couple of dozen American school kids trapped in Afghanistan? The White House isn't really interested in what happens to them. So they passed that portfolio to Tony Blinken, which tells you how completely unimportant they consider it. Quote, if there's an American citizen left in Afghanistan, Joe Biden told us the other day, we're going to stay until we get them all out. Right. He didn't mean that. So what's Tony Blinken's plan to get them all out, to rescue the American citizens trapped tonight in Afghanistan? Well, as Blinken told us yesterday, the governments of Haiti and the Republic of Congo have sent a strongly worded letter to the Taliban, and beware, they mean it. You wouldn't want to see the Republic of Congo when it's mad. That's the kind of week it's been. Whenever you think we have reached peak insanity, they double down. This afternoon, the supposed president of the United States appeared out of nowhere and decided to speak in public. Did you see it? How to describe the experience exactly? Weird is just the beginning. So first off, for example, Biden announced that the United States is done with Afghanistan forever. We're gone and we're not coming back, ever. Then Biden angrily announced that we'd, quote, hunt down something called ISIS-K, which sounds suspiciously like a new line of cosmetics from Kim Kardashian, but apparently isn't. This ISIS-K, Biden said, may be hiding in Afghanistan, in which case we will hunt them down there in Afghanistan. So actually, we're not really leaving Afghanistan. We could be back very soon. The whole speech was like that. It was disorienting. At one point, Biden bragged about what a remarkably, really a stunningly and historically successful military and intelligence operation we have just witnessed, all of us together. Apparently, Biden is under the impression that the entire United States has lost electrical power and no one has a working internet connection. So this is what he said.
We completed one of the biggest airlifts in history, with more than 120,000 people evacuated to safety. That number is more than double what most experts thought were possible. No nation has ever done anything like it in all of history. Only the United States had the capacity and the will and ability to do it, and we did it today. The extraordinary success of this mission was due to the incredible skill, bravery, and selfless courage of the United States military and our diplomats and intelligence professionals.
So no nation in history has ever done anything like this. Yeah, possible. But he didn't mean it like that. He's telling us that this was the Berlin airlift, plus D-Day, plus the moonshot, plus the invention of yoga pants. This was a triumph of American brilliance and ingenuity and will. 50 years from now, your grandchildren will celebrate Fall of Kabul Day with tears of pride in their eyes. My ancestors did that, they'll think. As we said, it was demented. It was literally demented. But over at the White House, they seem to believe every word of it. They are losing consciousness from huffing their own fumes.
Well, they're right. They're right about it. If you had the exact same set of facts and Donald Trump did it and not Joe Biden, everybody knows Tucker Carlson would be singing Donald Trump's praises. Everybody knows Tucker would be talking about the number of people who were evacuated successfully. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. But instead, Tucker goes on the offense and nitpicks the withdrawal exactly like pro-war corporate media, which means he's what? Pro-war corporate media. This is cucking to the deep state and the neocons and the military-industrial complex. That's exactly what this is. And don't take my word for it. Take another fellow paleo-conservative who previously was probably a big defender of Tucker Carlson. And we'll get to this later, but Ann Coulter is giving Joe Biden credit. Ann Coulter's like, listen, you got to hand it to him. He's doing America first. He's getting out of this place. He evacuated a lot of people successfully. What are you going to do? He had the balls to do what Trump only talked about doing. He had the balls to do what Trump only talked about doing. So let's go through this, because virtually everything he says there is completely disingenuous. So, Americans were left behind. Ooh! Ooh! We got out 120,000 people, over 5,000 Americans. And you know how many remain? About 200. There's about 200 Americans who remain. And most of those people are dual citizens. And they chose to stay behind. They chose to do it. So, weird. He doesn't bring up the specific numbers. Maybe because if you bring up the specific numbers, it actually sounds quite a bit like it was a good job. It was historic. It was amazing to get that many people out in a incredibly short time span. They also told these people 19 times since March, you got to get out. You got to get out. You got to get out. Now, some of them didn't listen. Whatever happened, now these are the conservatives who have a personal responsibility. Now all of a sudden there's no personal responsibility. We get out over 120,000 people and only a couple hundred remain. And it's not their issue. It's not their issue. Even though they were told 19 times to get out and a lot of them are dual citizens. It's not their issue. You're going to blame Joe Biden for that? And by the way, he doesn't mention the Taliban cooperated. And we'll get to a story later. I'll give you the specifics of there was high-level cooperation where it was very clear the Taliban was working with the United States and they cut a secret deal. And obviously ISIS was the problem. We spent $300 million per day. He says, now this part, again, this is Tucker trying to mislead his audience. He says, they've overseen the evacuation of tens of thousands of Afghan nationals. Now, he phrases that as if, it's something people should be against. In fact, he calls it Operation Change America Forever. So this is like anti-immigrant and anti-refugee sentiment. Except what's the problem? The entire right wing, along with all of corporate media, in unison in the initial days of the Taliban takeover of Kabul, what did they say? How could you leave behind 80,000 people who were helping the United States of America? There's the interpreters and the families of the interpreters and all these innocent people, and they just want a successful future, and they just want to live peaceful lives, and how could you leave them behind? So Biden's like, good point. All right, let's get him out. And he does. And they're like, oh, Operation Change America Forever. We don't want these refugees here. We don't want them at all. These people are liars. It doesn't matter what Joe Biden did in this instance. He was going to get attacked. And that is the hallmark of a complete hack. Tucker is a complete hack. He doesn't actually believe in something and then hold people to that standard and argue for that. He just flips his standard. If a Democratic president does the thing that he nominally liked, all of a sudden he flips on the thing that he said he believed in. Again, if Trump did the exact same thing as Biden here, if the exact same set of facts unfolded and it was Trump who got all these people out and pulled out of Afghanistan, he'd be singing his praises. Tucker would be like, 120,000 people were brought to safety by the amazing American military and the incredible commander-in-chief, Donald Trump. And we got all of the soldiers out of Afghanistan the way that the president promised he would do. He ended the forever war. But since it's Biden, he goes on the offense and he attacks. Operation Change America Forever, please. He's saying it wasn't a successful withdrawal when we got out 120,000 people. And again, in the initial fall of Kabul, when the Taliban took over, everybody, including President Trump, released a statement and was like, how could you leave behind the people who helped us? So Biden fixes that, and they're like, I can't believe you're helping the people who helped us. You should leave them there. We don't want to change the nature of this country and bring in refugees. The only area where he has a little bit of a point is when he says, Biden says, we're done with Afghanistan forever. And then he goes on to say, we'll hunt down ISIS wherever they are, even if they're in Afghanistan. Okay, so you're not really done with it forever. I mean, I get the point Biden is making. He's saying there's no more ground troops. There's no more occupation. You know, if we do anything, it'll be a drone strike or bombing from a fighter jet. But the nearest base is so far away. But, you know, yeah, that still counts. That still counts as intervening. That still counts as doing an act of war, even though we're not at war in the country. So on that one, he has a point. But everything else is complete bullshit. Listen, it's hard for me to wrap my mind around the fact that most of the commentariat is just, they're all total frauds and charlatans and con men. The extent of the contribution from all of these freaks is like, turn on MSNBC, what's the argument? Democrat good, Republican bad. Turn on Fox News, what are they arguing? Republican good, Democrat bad. Like, that's their entire contribution to the discourse. They are saying nothing. They are total mindless drones regurgitating stale talking points that could have been delivered by somebody in 1978 playing the same game of Democrat good or Republican good or whatever. It's so dumb. How can anybody like this? How can anybody enjoy this? How can anybody find this even mildly intellectually stimulating? It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life and the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. This is a guy who pretended to be a paleo-con and be anti-war, and now all of a sudden he's nitpicking the withdrawal in a way that he never nitpicked the occupation. You think there are problems with the withdrawal? That's the most competent part of the entire time we were there. The actual occupation was way worse. We allied with warlords with child sex slaves, and our military blew the whistle on them having child sex slaves, and then they were discharged. That seems like it's important. It seems like it's important that we wasted $8 trillion in these Middle East wars and have nothing to show for it, and nearly 1 million people died. That seems important. There's a million things you could pick apart about our war in Afghanistan and our wars in the Middle East, and instead of having those conversations, instead of discussing the Afghanistan papers in detail, they nitpick the withdrawal as if that's the problem, and that's what gets all the scrutiny, and so it presents a misleading picture to people. The withdrawal was the problem. When we were there, everything was hunky-dory, and Tucker's partaking in that. He's cucking to the deep state. That's exactly what this is. So his partisan feelings override any nominal principles he pretended to have. And this is virtually everybody in media. I'm so sick of people who are narrative humpers. I'm so sick of them. They're so useless. They're so pathetic. And honestly, you see it a lot in new media too. Anybody who drives home a narrative and never allows for any nuances and any caveats and any, well, this doesn't really fit into my narrative, so I need to tweak my worldview. They're frauds and they're lying to you. And it's not true. You know, for example, I despise Joe Biden with a burning passion. But he fucking pulled out of Afghanistan, which you have to give him credit for if you support pulling out of Afghanistan. You can't tap dance around that shit or do the mental gymnastics to be like, well, here's the reason why he doesn't deserve credit for doing the fucking thing that I said I wanted him to do. So you got all these narrative humpers. Democrat good, Republican good, Democrat bad, Republican bad. They're the left flank is always good people who are wrong. They're the left flank is always bad people who are wrong. All the politicians are exactly the same no matter what people. That's also incorrect. You have to go based on the issues and based on the evidence and based on the data. And everybody's being dishonest and everybody's fucking lying to you. And here you have Mr. Fake Populist, Mr. I'm a paleo-conservative. You're nothing. You're a hack. You're a hack. You're a paid puppet to go out there and do the same thing that Bill O'Reilly did in the same time slot for decades. So congratulations. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal Kyle and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take 0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.